So it's the new year, at least according to the Gregorian calendar that we have been using for quite some time now. And yet, this is what everything, I don't know. Okay, that first part was in cinematic. So, and yet, everything looks like this. At least where I am. In the Northern Hemisphere, in North America, specifically New England. And when so many people are rushing to make New Year's resolutions, although I think that in the post-COVID era, people are a little bit less eager to face the new year. People are overall a little bit more jaded, or demoralized, if you will. And we don't really see a whole lot of future ahead of us. Kind of like this beautiful but very obviously dead tree. This is almost a symbol for the way that many of us feel in our current civilization. There are so many issues facing us ecologically, environmentally, economically, socially, psychologically, technologically, geopolitically. The list goes on, and I'm sure that, you're well aware of what I'm talking about, at least in some of those areas. And yet, here we are. And I'm not going to pretend that now is the perfect time to, make New Year's resolutions, or, decide that you have to start taking radical actions towards your goals right now. I think that, at least in my neck of the woods, it's a good time to reflect on the past year and to look at all the different things that worked, as well as the various things that didn't. And I think it's time to take stock of everything and begin prepping for the new year, but not necessarily going full bore into everything, because obviously it is the dead of winter here. I think that stepping into new ways of behaving is more condusively done in the spring, but that does not diminish the opportunity that we have right now, because it's if we were to break down the year into a 24-hour clock, we're at midnight right now, or just after it. And so dawn is approaching, and the next day cycle has begun. So it is prudent to take advantage of that. And so my intentions for the next week is to take a good look at the past year and perform a mandala ritual for the upcoming year, which is what I did last winter. And I think that will be a good way to tap into my soul and the messages that it has for me in the upcoming year. And I would encourage you also to do something similar. If you've not done a mandala practice for the year, I think it's an incredibly powerful tool. I learned about it through Paul Chek, and he's been teaching workshops on it for almost a decade, I think. I could be wrong, but I haven't been able to afford working with his class specifically on that mandala workshop, but I've done it nonetheless. I started the first one last year, and I plan on doing it again because it was very fruitful. So I think that it's important to also recognize our concept of time for what it is. Right now, we all operate on this global, universal calendar that is essentially removing any sense of locality to our sense of time. We're no longer orienting ourselves towards our environment, towards what our ecology is showing us and what our natural rhythms want to do. Because, if you live in an environment like this is not when you would start new things. This is when you would be, gradually chipping away at the harvest from the fall. You would be, spending a lot of time indoors. You would be doing a lot of reading and contemplation and spending time with family, it would not be a time of growth and expansion, because everything is dormant. Everything is sleeping right now. Large animals like bears are hibernating, and the rest of the animals that are unable to hibernate have either migrated to warmer conditions or are, just surviving. And, now is not the time for bearing new children. Now is not the time for starting new projects. And so back to the point about the calendar, if you look at the history of calendars and timekeeping, it's always been very locally oriented. It has always been rooted in that particular culture and where that culture lives. And so you have New Year's starting on pretty much, if you had all the different calendars, months up on a wall and you threw a dart at it, you'd probably hit a new year for some culture. There are cultures that have their new year in the winter, in the spring, in the summer, in the fall. But spring, winter, summer, fall, all of that is going to look different depending on where you are in the world. Because right now, in the southern hemisphere, they're in the middle of summer. And yet on the universal global calendar that we all have been forced to adopt through our industrialized civilization, it says that it's New Year. No matter where you are in the world, right now is New Year. So I think it's important to recognize that, yes, it is technically the New Year in our globalized, interconnected system, but take a look outside and see what your environment is telling you, and then act accordingly.